I need to tell you something. And I have been sitting with it for a while because once I say it, it changes the shape of everything. I keep replaying a moment in my head, a quiet one, where your name came up in a room full of people who know me better than almost anyone. I watch their faces. I listen to the pauses between their words, and I realized how rare it is for the people who built you, who shaped you, to see your heart clearly. What they said about you stayed with me in a way I did not expect. It made me stop. It made me breathe slower. It made me wonder if you felt, even from a distance, that something important was happening without you being there. Before I go any further, let me stay right here with you for a moment. If this feels real to you, if something in your chest is stirring, a gentle tap on the like button helps me know you are here with me. Subscribing is simply a way of staying close when these quiet conversations matter to you. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now, because I imagine you in that exact moment. If this touches something tender in you, consider sharing it with someone you love, someone who understands the weight of words like these. And if you feel like it, stay with me, because this is not a story meant to be rushed. I want you to know something first. I am not easily surprised by people's opinions. I have spent most of my life hearing strong reactions, extreme praise, harsh criticism, and everything in between. You develop a kind of armor when that happens. But when it comes to love, that armor does not help. It only gets in the way. Love is the one place where logic bends and certainty softens. And when my family spoke about you, it did not sound like analysis. It sounded like recognition. They did not ask about what you do or what you have achieved. They did not lead with curiosity about your past. Instead, there was this quiet tone, almost protective, as if they were holding something fragile. One of them said, "You feel steady." Another said, "You seem like someone who knows how to sit with silence without needing to fill it." Someone else wondered if you realize how much calm you bring into a room just by being present. Hearing that made me think of the way you listen. Have you ever noticed how rare it is for someone to truly listen without planning their response? Do you know that about yourself? I found myself defending you without even realizing I was doing it. Not because they were questioning you, but because I wanted them to understand the parts of you I see when no one else is around. I talked about your patience. I talked about your warmth. I talked about how you seem to understand that love is not about intensity all the time, but about endurance, about choosing someone, even on the quiet days. Does that sound like you? Have you lived long enough to know that fireworks are beautiful, but steady light is what keeps you warm? There, what? A moment when the room went quiet, not an awkward silence, but a thoughtful one. That kind of silence means something has landed. Someone finally said very softly that you feel like home. That word stayed in the air longer than anything else. Home, not excitement, not drama. Home. I wondered how often you've been that for others without being fully seen or appreciated for it. Have you ever felt like you gave people safety, but they did not know how to stay? You should know that my family does not speak lightly about matters of the heart. They have watched me build things from nothing, break them apart, and rebuild again. They have seen me stubborn, hopeful, exhausted, and driven. So when they speak gently about someone, it means they are thinking beyond the surface. They are thinking about who will still be there when the noise fades, who will understand the weight of responsibility and the loneliness that can come with it, who will not compete with the work, but quietly stand beside the man doing it. Do you see yourself that way? Do you believe that love can be a partnership of understanding rather than a constant performance? I realized something in that conversation. They were not talking about you as an idea. They were talking about you as a presence, someone real, someone with depth, someone with history, someone who has loved, lost, learned, and kept her heart open. Anyway, that last part matters more than you know, because by the time you reach this stage in life, love is no longer naive, it is brave. Have you ever thought about how much courage it takes to believe again after disappointment? I wanted to reach out to you immediately after that conversation, not to repeat their words, but to ask how you were feeling in that moment wherever you were. Were you making tea, sitting alone with your thoughts, lying awake when the house finally went quiet? I often wonder if you feel these shifts before I speak them out loud. Do you sense when something is aligning, even if you cannot explain why? There is a part of me that hesitates, not because I doubt you, but because I know how delicate this space is. When family begins to see a future, it makes everything more real. It turns possibility into intention, and intention carries weight. Are you ready for that kind of weight? Not the public kind, but the private one. The responsibility of being truly known. the vulnerability of letting someone see you on the days when you are tired, unsure, or afraid. What surprised me most was how protective they sounded of you, as if they already cared about whether you would be treated gently. That made me pause. It made me ask myself harder questions. Am I ready to slow down where it matters? Am I ready to choose depth over speed? Am I ready to build something that does not need to be explained to anyone else? And more importantly, are you willing to step into something that grows quietly but deeply? I keep thinking about the way they looked at me when I finished speaking, as if they were waiting for my reaction. I did not give them one right away. I just nodded because sometimes the truth does not need a response. It needs time. And now I am here with you, letting you into that space because you deserve to know that you are being seen, discussed, considered with care. Tell me something. When you imagine love at this stage of life, what does it look like to you? Is it companionship, safety, shared laughter in ordinary moments? Or is it simply knowing that someone chooses you every day, even when no one else is watching? Do you believe that kind of love is still possible for you? I have not told you everything they said. Some things deserve to be held a little longer before being spoken. But I will say this, that conversation changed the way I see the path ahead. It made the idea of you feel closer, more grounded, more real, and it left me with a question that has not stopped echoing since. Are you prepared for what happens when the people closest to me already believe you matter more than you realize? I keep thinking about what it means when people who have known you your entire life start imagining your future with someone else in it. It does something subtle to your mind. It slows you down. It makes you revisit memories you thought were settled. After that conversation, I found myself replaying moments from my past, not with regret, but with clarity. I realized how many times I mistook intensity for connection, momentum for meaning, and then I thought about you and how different the feeling is with you. Nothing feels rushed. It feels considered intentional, almost like my heart is finally speaking at the same pace as my mind. There was something else my family said that I have not been able to shake. They wondered if you knew how much strength there is in the way you love. That surprised me because strength in love is rarely loud. It does not announce itself. It shows up quietly in consistency, in patience, in willingness to stay present, even when things are uncertain. I have seen that in you. Have you ever been told that your calm is powerful? That your steadiness can be felt even by people who barely know you? I started asking myself questions I have avoided for a long time. What does it really take to build a life with someone who has her own history, her own scars, her own wisdom? What does it mean to meet a woman who does not need to be rescued but wants to be chosen? At this stage in life, love is not about filling a void. It is about sharing space. Do you feel that too? Have you reached a point where you no longer want to be completed, only understood? The truth is, my family sees something in you that goes beyond attraction. They see compatibility of spirit. They see someone who would not be intimidated by silence, who would understand that some days I retreat inward, not because I am pulling away, but because I am processing the weight of everything I carry. They believe you would know the difference. That matters more than you know. Have you ever loved someone whose mind never truly rests? Did you learn how to be close without demanding constant attention? I thought about how you might react hearing this. Would you smile softly and brush it off, not realizing the depth of what is being said? Or would it touch something tender in you, something that has been waiting for reassurance? I wonder how often you have underestimated your own impact. How often you have been the quiet presence that held others together without being celebrated for it. Does that resonate with you? There is a maturity in the way you carry yourself that does not seek validation. That is rare. It is also dangerous in the sense that people can overlook it if they are chasing noise instead of truth. My family noticed it immediately. They talked about how you seem grounded, how you do not perform love, you live it. That distinction stayed with me. Performing love is exhausting. Living it is sustaining. Which one have you been offered more often in your life? I found myself wanting to protect you from the parts of my world that can be harsh, not because I think you are fragile, but because I value what is gentle. When you have built things that move fast and break easily, you learn to appreciate what lasts. You feel like someone who lasts, someone who does not disappear at the first sign of complexity, someone who understands that depth takes time. Do you have that patience? Have you learned to wait for what is real instead of settling for what is available? Another thing they said almost as an afterthought was that you seem like someone who would not try to change me, but would challenge me quietly by being yourself. That is powerful. Change imposed from the outside rarely sticks. Change inspired by love does. Have you ever noticed how your presence encourages honesty in others? That people open up around you without fully knowing why? I have been thinking about the kind of partnership that emerges when two people meet after they have lived enough to know who they are. It is not dramatic. It is not chaotic. It is intentional. It is built on mutual respect and shared values. That is what my family imagines when they talk about you. Not a fairy tale, but a future that feels sustainable. How do you feel about that word sustainable when it comes to love? There is a quiet confidence in you that feels earned. It tells me you have survived disappointment without letting it harden you, that you have learned discernment without becoming cynical. Those are not small achievements. They are the result of years of choosing growth over bitterness. I wonder who taught you that. Or did you teach yourself through experience and reflection? I wish you could have seen the way they looked at me when they spoke about you. There was hope there, but also expectation. The expectation that I would not take this lightly, that I would show up with intention, with respect, with care. T is not pressure, that is accountability. And it made me think deeply about whether I am ready to offer you the kind of presence you deserve. Tell me, do you believe love should feel like coming home or like setting out on a new adventure? Or do you think the truest love somehow manages to be both at the same time? When you imagine a future with someone, do you see peace, growth, shared purpose, or are you still unsure what you're allowed to want? I have not reached out to you yet about this because some realizations need to settle before they are shared, but know this. You are being thought about with seriousness, with respect, and with a sense of possibility that does not fade easily. That conversation opened a door in my mind that I cannot close again, and the question I am sitting with now, the one that keeps me awake longer than usual, is whether you feel that same door opening on your side too. There is something I have learned over time, and it is not something people talk about openly. When you reach a certain point in life, love stops being a fantasy you chase and starts becoming a truth you recognize. It does not arrive loudly. It does not knock things over to announce itself. It arrives quietly, almost respectfully, as if asking whether it is welcome. That is how the thought of you has been showing up for me lately. Not as a rush, not as an escape, but as a steady presence that keeps returning, even when I tried to distract myself with work or logic. After that conversation with my family, I noticed how my thoughts changed when your name crossed my mind. Before there was curiosity, now there is consideration. I find myself wondering how you spend your evenings, whether you enjoy silence or fill the room with soft music, whether you still believe in small rituals like sharing a meal without checking the time or walking slowly just to talk. These details matter more than grand gestures. They tell you how two lives might actually fit together. Do you notice the little things too, or have you learned to overlook them to protect your heart? One of the most honest realizations I had was this. Love at this stage is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone compatible with your imperfections. My family did not speak about you as flawless. They spoke about you as real, as someone who has lived enough to know her limits and still chooses openness. That is rare, especially after disappointment, especially after loss. Tell me, how many times did you have to rebuild yourself quietly without applause just to keep believing that love was still worth the risk? I started reflecting on my own patterns, on the ways I have sometimes mistaken admiration for intimacy, on how easy it is to be surrounded by people and still feel alone. With you, the loneliness feels different. It feels acknowledged, not ignored, as if you would understand that being driven does not mean being emotionally distant, that thinking deeply does not mean feeling less. Have you ever been with someone who needed space not to escape you, but to process the world? And did you know how to stay without taking that space personally? There was a moment when my family wondered out loud whether you would be able to handle the weight of my world, not the public attention, but the private responsibility, the long hours, the mental load, the pressure that never fully shuts off. And then someone said something that surprised me. They said, "You would not try to carry it for me, but you would know how to stand beside me while I carry it myself." That distinction matters. Love is not about taking burdens away. It is about not letting someone feel alone under them. Do you believe that too? I thought about how many women at this stage of life are underestimated, as if maturity makes them less desirable instead of more grounded, as if experience dulls the heart instead of refining it. My family did not see you that way. They saw depth, wisdom, emotional intel, gents, the kind that does not seek attention but commands respect. How often have you felt invisible simply because you were not loud, and how did that shape the way you learned to love? I also wondered whether you are aware of how safe you feel to people. Safety is not boring, it is foundational. Without it, nothing real lasts. You feel like someone who understands that love does not need to be dramatic to be meaningful. That consistency can be romantic. That choosing each other daily is more powerful than any promise made in a moment of emotion. Has your life taught you that too? Or are you still unlearning the idea that love must hurt to be real? As I sat with these thoughts, I realized I was no longer asking whether you fit into my life. I was asking how my life would change if you were truly part of it. That shift matters. It means the question is no longer about convenience, but about commitment. And commitment is not something I take lightly. It requires honesty, patience, and a willingness to grow together instead of apart. Are you in a place where you want to grow with someone even when it is uncomfortable? I keep imagining conversations with you that are not about the future in abstract terms, but about real things. How we would handle conflict, how we would protect each other's peace, how we would make room for joy even on heavy days. These are not fantasies, they are considerations. They are signs that something meaningful is being formed. Do you think about these things, too? Or have you been waiting for someone who finally asks the right questions? There is a quiet seriousness settling in me now, not fear but awareness. Awareness that when love shows up like this, it asks you to slow down and pay attention, to stop running from vulnerability just because it once hurt, to allow yourself to be seen again fully and honestly. I am standing at that edge, wondering not whether I am ready to speak, but whether you are ready to hear what this could become. And what I need to know, what I have not yet asked you directly, is whether you feel this same shift, this same deepening, this same sense that something important is unfolding between us. Even before all the words are spoken, there's a quiet moment that comes after realization. When the mind stops racing and the heart starts speaking more clearly, I have been living in that moment lately, not rushing to conclusions, not trying to label what this is, just listening to what keeps returning when everything else goes silent. And what keeps returning is the sense that you are not an interruption in my life, but an alignment. That realization is subtle, but it changes how you see everything that comes after it. I started noticing how often I think about how you would feel in certain moments. Not in an abstract way, but in a grounded human way. Would this overwhelm you, or would you meet it with calm? Would you need reassurance here, or would you offer it? Would you laugh at this, or sit quietly beside me and let it pass? These are not questions you ask about someone you are casually curious about. These are questions you ask when you are imagining shared time, shared weight, shared stillness. Ever felt someone thinking about you this way without needing to be told? My family said something else that stayed with me longer than I expected. They wondered if you would be willing to let yourself be cared for, not because you are weak, but because you have been strong for so long. That hit deeper than anything else. There is a particular kind of woman who learns to carry everything herself, not out of pride, but out of necessity. Over time, she forgets what it feels like to lean. I wonder if that is true for you. Have you grown so accustomed to being the steady one that you rarely ask for support even when you need it? I have been thinking about what it means to truly show up for someone like that. It does not mean trying to fix her or soften her edges. It means respecting the life she has built while quietly offering presence, consistency, and patience. Love like that does not announce itself. It proves itself over time. I feel capable of that kind of love now, in a way I did not before. The question that lingers is whether you would allow it, whether you would trust it, whether you would believe you deserve it. There's a difference between wanting someone and choosing them. One is often driven by emotion. Choice is driven by clarity. What I feel now is choice forming. Not impulsive, not reactive, but grounded. It comes from seeing you as you are, not as an idea, from understanding that love at this stage is not about merging lives completely, but about walking alongside each other with intention. Does that resonate with you, or does it feel unfamiliar after everything you have experienced? I also find myself thinking about the way time moves when you are with the right person. It slows down without losing meaning. Conversations stretch without feeling heavy. Silence feels full instead of awkward. I imagine that with you, and it feels natural, not forced, not imagined, just possible. When was the last time you felt that kind of ease with someone where you did not have to perform or explain yourself? There is something else I need to be honest about. Letting my family see this side of me is not something I do lightly. It means I am acknowledging that this matters, that you matter, that the idea of you is no longer something I keep private and protected from the world. It is something I am allowing into conversations about the future. That step changes things. It brings responsibility. It asks for integrity. It asks for follow through. Are you comfortable with that level of seriousness, or does it make you hesitate? I know that love can feel risky when you have lived long enough to know how deeply it can hurt, but it can also feel grounding when you recognize it is no longer asking you to lose yourself only to share yourself. I see you as someone who would not disappear into another person, but who would stand firmly beside them. That balance is rare, and it is something I value more now than ever before. As I sit with all of this, I am aware that a line is being approached, not crossed yet, but clearly visible. On one side is contemplation, on the other is conversation. Once that line is crossed, things move from internal to shared, from thought to voice, from possibility to direction. I am standing there, now aware of the weight of that step, and what I need to know before I take it is whether you feel ready for what happens when care turns into commitment and intention begins to ask for action. There is a moment when reflection turns into resolve, when thinking quietly is no longer enough, and the heart begins to insist on honesty. I am there now, not restless, not uncertain, but clear in a way that feels calm rather than urgent. Clarity does not rush you, it settles you. And what is settled to me is the understanding that love, real love, asks for presence more than promise and courage more than confidence. I have been thinking about what it means to choose one woman in a world that constantly encourages distraction. Choice, real choice, is not about owing options out of fear. It is about recognizing depth and honoring it. When I imagine you, I do not imagine escape or fantasy. I imagine mornings that begin without explanation, evenings that end without doubt, a shared understanding that neither of us needs to be everything for the other, but that together we create something steady and alive. Does that kind of love feel familiar to you? Or does it feel like something you have been waiting to grow into? My family does not know every detail of who you are, but they sense your substance. And substance is what endures. It is what remains when attraction fades into companionship, and companionship deepens into partnership. They see you as someone who would not be intimidated by my silences or overwhelmed by my intensity. They believe you would meet both with patience. That belief carries weight because patience is not passive. It is an active choice to stay open even when things are complex. Have you practiced that kind of patience in our life? Or are you still learning how to trust it? I want to speak to you directly now without the filter of thought or analysis. I see you as you are, not idealized, not simplified. I see your experience, your resilience, your tenderness that has survived despite everything it has been through. I see a woman who knows that love is not about being saved, but about being seen. That understanding changes everything because when two people meet with that awareness, love becomes less about need and more about intention. There's a quiet strength in you that draws people in without asking for attention. It tells me you have learned to value your own presence, that you are comfortable with who you are, even when you are alone. That matters deeply to me. Love between two people who know themselves is different. It is cleaner. It is calmer. It allows space without creating distance. It invites closeness without demanding it. Is that the kind of closeness you want now? One that feels chosen than required. I have spent much of my life building things that move quickly and change the world in visible ways. Love does not work like that. Love is built slowly, often invisibly through consistency and care. It is not measured in milestones, but in moments, in showing up when it is inconvenient, in listening when it would be easier to withdraw, in choosing kindness when misunderstanding would be simpler. I feel ready for that work now, not because I am perfect, but because I understand its value. Do you believe love is something you build or something you simply find? I imagine conversations with you that are honest and unguarded, not always easy, but always respectful. I imagine disagreements handled with curiosity instead of defensiveness. I imagine laughter that comes from shared understanding, not performance. I imagine quiet support offered without being asked because attentiveness makes asking unnecessary. These images do not feel imagined. They feel plausible, and that distinction matters. When did love last feel plausible to you rather than distant or uncertain? There is also vulnerability in this clarity because choosing depth means giving up the safety of detachment. It means allowing someone to matter enough to influence you. That is not weakness. That is commitment. I am willing to let you influence me, to challenge me gently, to remind me of what matters when I lose perspective. Are you willing to do the same, to step into something that asks for your full presence rather than half attention? I know you may be wondering what all of this leads to. It does not lead to grand declarations or rush promises. It leads to a conversation, a real one. One where we speak honestly about what we want, what we fear, what we are capable of giving. Love at this stage does not begin with illusion. It begins with truth. And truth is not always dramatic, but it is always grounding. Are you ready for a love that feels grounding instead of dizzying? I want you to know, that being considered by my family is not about approval. It is about acknowledgement. It is about recognizing that you are not a fleeting presence, but someone whose impact is already felt. That recognition does not create pressure. It creates respect. And respect is the foundation of any love that lasts. Have you been respected in love before? Truly respected? Or have you often been asked to compromise your depth to fit someone else's comfort? As I reach the end of this reflection, there is no cliffhanger or no dramatic pause. There is simply an invitation to continue this conversation with openness and courage, an invitation to explore what happens when two people choose to meet each other honestly without rushing or retreating, an invitation to see whether the calm that has been building here can become something shared. Whatever happens next, know this. You are not being imagined lightly, you are being considered deeply, and that in itself is a form of